Atomic Habits by James Clear. Why do some people effortlessly stick to good habits while others struggle to make changes last? It all comes down to the small things, tiny decisions repeated every day that shape who we become. Good habits don't happen by luck, and bad ones don't appear out of nowhere. They follow patterns, run on autopilot, and build up over time. The secret to real change isn't in massive overhauls, but in understanding how habits work and using that to your advantage. So, how do you take control of your daily actions and make habits work for you instead of against you? Well, that's what we will tackle today. Buckle up. The power of tiny changes. Now, change doesn't happen overnight. It's sneaky, creeping in through the smallest actions that seem meaningless at first. You wake up, brush your teeth, grab your phone, and scroll for a bit. Harmless, right? But do that every morning for years, and suddenly you're starting each day glued to a screen instead of doing something that sets a positive tone. Now flip that. Swap the mindless scrolling for something simple. 2 push-ups, a page from a book, a quick stretch. Seems like nothing, barely worth doing. But do it every day, and something weird starts happening. That tiny action turns into 2 pages, then 10 push-ups, then a 5-minute workout. Months go by, and now you're the kind of person who exercises daily or reads regularly without even thinking about it. That's the secret behind small habits. They're like drops of water. One drop does nothing, but over time they fill a glass, then a bucket, then an entire ocean. The change is slow, almost invisible at first, but keep at it and it becomes undeniable. This is what makes habits powerful. They stack up day after day without needing some big life overhaul. Nobody needs to wake up one day and completely reinvent themselves. The trick is to focus on tiny shifts, small enough to be easy, consistent enough to reshape your life. It's how champions are built. The best athletes, the most successful people, the ones who seem to have it all figured out, they don't rely on motivation. They build systems, routines so small they can't fail, habits that compound over time. They don't train like beasts once in a while. They show up every day, even if it's just a little. And well, it works in reverse too. Skip a workout today, no big deal. Do it again, still seems fine. But stretch that over weeks, months. That's how people who used to be in shape lose it. That's how bad habits creep in, slowly pulling everything in the wrong direction. This is why small changes matter. They seem too minor to make a difference, but that's exactly why they're powerful. Now that we understand how small actions add up, let's look at the science behind habits, how they form, why they stick, and what makes them so powerful. The habit loop. You wake up, check your phone. You smell food, suddenly you're hungry. You sit on the couch, and without thinking, you reach for the remote. These actions feel automatic, like they're wired into the brain. It's because they are. Every habit, good or bad, follows the same cycle. A cue, something that triggers the behavior. Maybe it's the sound of your alarm, a certain time of day, or even boredom creeping in. That cue leads to a craving, a pull towards something that feels satisfying. Then comes the response, the actual habit itself. And finally, the reward, the part that makes the brain want to do it again. Take scrolling through your phone. The cue? Feeling slightly bored. The craving? A quick hit of entertainment or distraction. The response? You unlock your phone and start scrolling. The reward? A short burst of dopamine that keeps you coming back. Do it enough times, and suddenly your brain links boredom to reaching for your phone, making it a habit without you even realizing it. Now, the same cycle works for good habits too. Let's say someone wants to get into reading. The cue could be placing a book on the bedside table. The craving? The anticipation of a good story or learning something new. The response? Picking up the book and reading a page or two. The reward? That sense of progress or enjoyment from reading. Understanding this loop is the key to controlling habits. Want to build a new one? Set up a strong cue. Want to break a bad one? Make the cue harder to spot or remove it entirely. When habits feel automatic, it's not magic. It's this cycle running in the background, shaping behavior every single day. Once you see how habits run on autopilot, the next step is figuring out how to take control. That's where the 4 laws of behavior change come in. The 4 laws of behavior change. 1. Make it obvious. Habits don't stick when they're hidden in the background. The mind relies on cues, little signals that tell it what to do next. If a habit doesn't have a clear starting point, it's easy to forget. That's why setting up obvious reminders makes a huge difference. For example, someone trying to drink more water can leave a bottle on their desk. Someone who wants to stretch daily can keep a yoga mat out where they'll see it. When the cue is in plain sight, the habit feels like the next natural step. Another trick is to tie new habits to ones that already exist. Brushing teeth? That's a perfect moment to add a quick floss. Making coffee? A great time to read a page or two from a book. This method, called habit stacking, connects new behaviors to routines that are already set, making them easier to remember. 2. Make it attractive. Nobody sticks to habits that feel like a chore. The brain needs a reason to want the behavior. One way to do this is by pairing it with something enjoyable. Take workouts, for example. Some people struggle to stay consistent because exercising feels like a drag. Pairing it with a favorite podcast or a playlist turns it into something to look forward to. Instead of forcing it, the brain starts craving that time. Another way is to surround yourself with people who already do what you want to do. If friends hit the gym regularly, it's easier to stay active. If coworkers read often, picking up books feels more natural. Behavior spreads in groups, so being around the right people makes new habits easier to stick with. 3. Make it easy. Hard habits don't last. If something feels like a massive effort, motivation fades fast. The key is to make actions so simple that skipping them doesn't even make sense. Take someone trying to build a reading habit. Instead of aiming for a chapter a day, they can start with 1 page. That's it. Just 1 page? It sounds almost too easy, but that's the point. Once the book is open, reading more happens naturally. For fitness, the same idea applies. Instead of planning a 1-hour gym session, just start with 1 push-up. Instead of a full workout, do a 5-minute stretch. When an action is easy, it's hard to skip, and over time, it grows into something bigger. 4. Make it satisfying. The brain repeats behaviors that feel good. Habits need an immediate reward to reinforce them. This is why tracking progress works so well. Marking an X on a calendar every time a habit is completed creates a sense of accomplishment. That small win gives the brain a reason to keep going. Another way to make habits satisfying is by using small rewards. After completing a workout, it can be something as simple as watching a favorite show guilt-free. After finishing a work session, it could be stepping out for fresh air. The reward doesn't have to be big. It just needs to signal to the brain that the action was worth it. But what about the habits that work against you? Well, just as we can build good habits, we can also break bad ones by flipping these laws. Breaking bad habits. 1. Make it invisible. Bad habits thrive on triggers. A notification, a certain time of day, a specific environment, these cues make the habit automatic. The simplest way to weaken a bad habit is to remove the trigger completely. For example, someone trying to stop snacking on junk food can move it out of sight. Instead of keeping chips on the kitchen counter, storing them in a hard-to-reach cabinet makes them less tempting. The same strategy applies to phone use. Leaving the phone in another room while working reduces the urge to check it every few minutes. Without the cue, the habit loses its pull. Another way to make habits invisible is by avoiding environments that encourage them. If someone is trying to cut down on alcohol, spending less time in bars helps. If watching TV leads to mindless eating, finding a different spot to sit in the evening can help break the link between the two habits. 2. Make it unattractive. Every habit has a story behind it, an excuse that makes it seem like a good idea. A person trying to quit smoking might tell themselves it helps with stress. Someone who procrastinates might believe they work better under pressure. These justifications make habits harder to break. To change this, the story needs to be rewritten. Instead of thinking of smoking as stress relief, it can be seen as something that drains energy and money. Instead of believing procrastination leads to better work, it can be reframed as something that creates unnecessary anxiety. Changing the way a habit is viewed makes it less appealing. Being around people who don't share the habit also helps. If a group of friends is into fitness, unhealthy choices feel out of place. If coworkers focus on productivity, procrastination becomes less acceptable. Social pressure plays a huge role in shaping behavior, and being in the right environment makes quitting easier. 3. Make it difficult. Bad habits stick because they're effortless. One click opens social media. Junk food is within reach. The TV remote is right there. The easier something is to do, the more likely it happens. Making a habit harder to follow weakens it. This can be done by increasing the effort needed to engage in the habit. Someone who spends too much time on social media can log out after every use, making it annoying to sign back in. A person who plays video games too often can unplug the console after each session. Even small inconveniences create enough resistance to reduce the habit. Another way to make bad habits difficult is by setting up rules. For example, deciding to only check social media on a laptop instead of a phone instantly cuts down on mindless scrolling. Placing snacks in hard-to-reach spots makes it easier to skip them. Creating these small obstacles makes a habit less automatic. 4. Make it unsatisfying. Habits stick because they bring rewards. A late-night snack tastes good. Skipping a workout feels relaxing. Procrastinating on work gives temporary relief. To break a habit, the reward needs to disappear. One of the best ways to do this is through accountability. If a goal is shared with someone else, failing to follow through feels worse. Having a friend check in on progress or even setting up small consequences for slipping up makes habits harder to ignore. Another strategy is to track behavior. Writing down every time a habit happens makes it clear how often it's occurring. Seeing patterns and recognizing how often a bad habit is repeated creates a stronger push to change. But then habits aren't just about what we do, they shape who we are. And the most powerful way to make lasting changes? Start with identity. Identity and habits. People often focus on results. They want to lose weight, save money, or get in shape. The goal is always clear, but the process is where things fall apart. This happens because most people try to change their habits without changing how they see themselves. Habits don't stick when they feel temporary. Someone can force themselves to exercise, but if they still think of themselves as a person who hates working out, that habit will never last. Change happens when habits shift from being something a person does to being part of who they are. For example, a smoker who is trying to quit will struggle if they still think of themselves as someone who smokes. The craving never really goes away because the identity is still there. Now compare that to someone who sees themselves as a non-smoker. Instead of fighting against the habit, they reject it because it doesn't match who they are. This mindset applies to everything. Instead of aiming to run a marathon, someone can decide they are a runner. Instead of trying to write a book, they can start seeing themselves as a writer. When identity changes, habits follow naturally. Then we need to understand identity doesn't change overnight. It's built through small actions repeated over time. Every workout proves that someone is an active person. Every saved dollar proves that they are financially responsible. Every book read reinforces the identity of a reader. Instead of focusing on massive goals, a better approach is to ask, what kind of person do I want to become? Then, take small actions every day that align with that identity. If someone wants to be a healthy person, they don't have to overhaul their diet instantly. Eating one healthy meal is proof. Exercising for 10 minutes is proof. These small wins add up, reinforcing the identity over time. But even with the best systems in place and the right identity, setbacks happen. So how do you stay consistent and avoid the most common habit-breaking mistakes? Well, there are some things you need to understand. How to overcome pitfalls. You see, people expect habits to bring fast results. A few days of working out should mean more energy. A few weeks of saving should lead to visible financial progress. When that doesn't happen, frustration kicks in. This is the plateau of latent potential, the period where effort is building up behind the scenes, but results aren't obvious yet. It's like heating an ice cube. The room warms from 25 to 26 degrees, then 27, then 28. The ice doesn't change. At 31 degrees, still nothing. Then at 32 degrees, it melts. The shift looks sudden, but the energy was building the entire time. Habits work the same way. Growth is happening long before results show up. The key is to keep going, even when nothing seems to be happening. On the other hand, a lot of people quit habits because they break a streak. They eat one unhealthy meal and decide the diet is ruined. They miss one workout and stop going completely. This mindset makes small failures feel like complete disasters. A single missed day doesn't erase progress. What matters is getting back on track as soon as possible. The rule is simple: never miss twice. If a workout is skipped, the next session happens no matter what. If a day of reading is missed, the book gets opened the next day. The habit stays alive because the gap never stretches too long. But then, most habits also fail because they rely too much on motivation. People start strong when they feel inspired, but when energy runs low, the habit disappears. The ones that last don't depend on motivation. They run on systems. A system makes habits automatic. Setting a specific time and place for an action removes the need to think about it. Preparing the right environment makes starting easier. Tracking progress builds momentum. When habits run on a system, they keep going even when motivation is gone. In the end, every choice, no matter how small, is shaping the kind of person you're becoming. Right now, without even realizing it, you're reinforcing certain behaviors, some good, some not so much. So here's the real question. If you kept living exactly the way you are today, where would you end up in 5 years? Would your habits take you somewhere you want to be, or are they leading you in a direction you'd rather avoid? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up.